Welcome to episode 5 of Fight Game Chronicles. I'm your host, James Lynch, joined by my co-host, Kevin Froggie Mubenga. What is up, Kev? How you doing, man?
I'm good, my brother. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Busy, but it's been a busy fight week. We've had, 3 UFC cards in the span of a week. We had the Holloway card on Saturday. We had a card today. We'll get into all that stuff here. Quick shout out to our producer, Taylor, who's always making it happen here behind the scenes. But let's talk about Saturday's main event, Max Holloway, Calvin Kattar. Max Holloway putting on a clinic on Calvin Kattar. I thought it was going to be a much closer fight, Kev, but Holloway went out there, looked like a video game character from the opening bell. Really fast, good striking, good body shots, good elbows. I mean, Calvin Kattar was not in this fight at all. In fact, I was shocked that Kattar went the 5 rounds. I know he'd never been finished, but he looked like a zombie in the 3rd or 4th round, just walking forward and taking those shots here. Just first thoughts on Holloway's performance. I really think he made a statement and really showed fans that he should be in that title conversation.
I think that Max tapped into he was everything was in sync, everything flowed. He was in that space that fighters talk about, where like you ever hear fighters talk about like, yo, I didn't feel anything, everything was just happening. Like I feel like when a basketball player says, yo, he was hot, he says the net was this big, he said the rim was this big. Well, that was one of those moments. We just witnessed the guy in pocket, fully everything came together, like everything you train for in training camp and everything you prepare for. And mind you, the guy didn't spar. He didn't spar for this fight. So he had it all come together that night, and he was able to put it out. And it's very hard to do that, for everything to come together like that. Usually you come in there kind of hurt. Usually half of your plan works, some of it works, and you got to readjust. But he made the readjustments. He came in there with a good game plan. Everything was just fluid, man. He was flowing. That's what you call that.
Do you think the fight should have been stopped? I think there was a point maybe in that 4th or 5th round. I know Calvin's got knockout power, but it really didn't seem like that was going to happen. And he's fighting a guy in Holloway who's never been finished, right? And this is a guy who's fought Conor McGregor and a lot of other fighters. You do wonder. I mean, I was kind of watching there being like, we had Stephen Thompson on this week, right? I was asking him his thoughts on the fight. He felt like the fight should have been stopped later on. What did you think when you were watching that with Calvin Kattar?
Several points in the fight, I thought the fight should be stopped.
Yeah.
In the 3rd, I thought in the 3rd, when he started really taking a lot of punishment at some point. In the 4th, against the cage, he was against the cage and he was trying to slit, but he, everywhere he was moving his head to, a punch was connecting with wherever his head was going. So and it was a fury fight, and it was a flurry for a while there. And then I saw was it Herb Dean that was in there with them? I believe it was Herb Dean that was in there, and I saw Herb Dean kind of look, and like he almost stepped in there, but he kind of I'm gonna give this guy another chance, and then that ferociousness that was happening towards the cage kind of let back, and then they got back to the middle of the cage. But he could have stopped him there, and he could have stopped him in the 5th, somewhere early in the 5th too. So.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think either way, and I think it's pretty obvious what's next for Holloway. I think he'll get the winner of Volkanovski and Ortega. Even if Volkanovski wins, I know that he has 2 losses to Volkanovski. That second fight was very close, but I think the type of performance that Max put on, that's got to put him back in the driver's seat. And for Calvin Kattar, I think what's next is time off. I do not want to see Kattar get back in there anytime soon. If he wants to come back in the fall or the winter, or even take the full year off, I'm fine with that. I think oftentimes we see fighters come back a little bit too soon, but he needs to step down a bit to get back, on the winning track here, whether it's an up and comer like a Bryce Mitchell or Sadiq Youssef, someone like that. You don't need to give him to the wolves, so to speak, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. Where are you leaning on this? Do you think Max did enough to get sort of the winner of Volkanovski and Ortega?
It's worse for a fighter to take a beating like that for 5 rounds than it is to get knocked out, like a crazy knockout. It's far worse than that. It's much worse. And it wasn't even like he was in the fight. He was never in the fight. Like his heart was there to not lose. And, he gave it an honest effort, but from a competitive standpoint, it wasn't competitive at all. It was a one-sided fight. A guy was dominating a really good fighter that's in the top 5, top 6, So I think he needs to take, a long break, because I think they 6-month medically suspended him for 6 months. So I think that we shouldn't see this guy until the fall, winter, at least, because he needs the break for himself. You gotta analyze, you gotta reflect on, because you've had good performances to date, but the guy showed you a different level that nobody's ever beat this guy this way, and you gotta assess why were you getting hit with so many punches, and if that's the highest level and that's the best, then you've been able to go in there with the highest level. Now you got to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, this is what the highest level guy feels like. If I'm able to perform better against a guy like this, then I'll beat everybody else that's in the pack. So he needs some serious assessment and some rest. And yeah, he shouldn't be getting hit with that many punches. You know?
You touched on something interesting there, and I wanted to get sort of your take on this. You mentioned how Max didn't spar. He actually hasn't sparred for the last 2 fights in training camp, and those have been some of his better performances. I mean, he's had a lot of good performances, but I mean, even that Volkanovski loss that he had, it was a close fight. A lot of people felt like he won. This fight, obviously, really just a dominant performance. Is that something you're starting to hear of more with, you know, some of the fighters you work with, or just in circles where guys aren't sparring as much? Because that's still kind of a, you know, I know some fighters who love it, and I have some fighters who don't do it. What's sort of your assessment on that?
It depends on the guy, and also a guy like Max doesn't need to learn how to fight.
Exactly,
know how to fight. He doesn't need to. You know, a guy like that, he likes to preserve himself a little bit more, and he also doesn't like, he's a fighter, so he just knows how to fight. Only thing he needs to do is prepare for a fight, and that's how he feels, and he's confident in that. And also, there's some sort of simulation that still takes place, that whether it's drilling. You know, when you're drilling on the mats, whether you're light touching, you know, not sparring, because I know what he's talking about. Like, he's not going in there and doing 5-round boxings, 4 rounds mixed martial arts, striking and Muay Thai. Like, he ain't doing none of that. He is straight up hitting pads, straight up drilling, you know, but there's still some simulation that happens. The day of the fight is when he puts it all together. And also, I think for him, I can't speak for him, but from my assessment, I feel like he likes to bottle up the full energy and that full momentum and just take it into the fight instead of building up towards the fight and actually doing sparring. Now, sparring, I think, is important. It just depends on who it is, honestly, and how much sparring you need. You know, certain guys don't need a lot of sparring. You know, certain guys just need a lot of drilling and a lot of reputation on shit and just a lot of time to get in shape. Because Max's last fight was when? 4 months ago?
The fight was, it was the Volkanovski fight, the second Volkanovski fight that he lost, and that was last year. I want to say it was like November or something.
It was November of 2020?
I think so. Let me double check.
Yeah, he doesn't need to spar. Of course he doesn't need to spar. If he fought in November.
Yeah, I'm just double checking here as I'm trying to not spell Volkanovski, VOL.
Taylor, when is his last fight?
Yeah, we're just looking it up right now. I got it here. It was July, actually. It was July, so it actually wasn't that far back.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad because, that's not that bad, really. And if it's a 5-rounder that you were just in, you just really got to drill, like, you continue doing what you're doing and then prepare for the next guy. So, you know, hats off to him, you know, and I'm all for it, you know, because a lot of guys lose a lot in sparring. A lot of guys are losing a lot of themselves in the sparring because you do so much of it, you know. So,
teach their own. Of course, the other big news from that card was this whole announcement with Khabib Nurmagomedov, you know, what was happening. I'll give the UFC credit. They did a good job. They kind of teased it like the LeBron announcement a little bit, right? Dana did the video on social media where he's walking into the room with Khabib and they're teasing the announcement and this and this. And I mean, we've talked about this before all along. I still don't think Khabib's coming back. But anyways, I was intrigued. I thought they did a good job. But here's the problem. They're like, the announcement's going to happen at 3 p.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Well, I'm watching. I'm not seeing no announcement. They're going right to the Puna Soriano fight, which I guess worked out well for him because he got a knockout. I'm sure more people tuned into it. But then we get the announcement right after that fight. Dana White basically saying, well, Khabib, you know, he's going to watch 257. And if he sees something spectacular, then he might come back. It's like we're basically at the same point we were before. He's not officially retired, but he's not coming back and saying yes. What was your reaction to the news?
In the words of the great Nick Diaz, they're selling y'all wolf tickets out here, and y'all eating them right up.
I know. It's crazy.
He told us years ago that they're selling us wolf tickets. You know, and they sold the wolf ticket, they bought the wolf ticket, and now you're sitting there waiting for some announcement to happen. Nah, bro, he just wanted you to tune in, man. You know, and he's gonna regardless of news without news, he's gonna have a discussion with the guy, and they're gonna figure out what they're gonna figure out. But they already know what they're gonna do. This is all just part of the plan, and this is part of Khabib's plan. This is part of Dana's plan, and they're just flowing how they're flowing. But they're selling y'all wolf tickets, and y'all eating them right up.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I look and let's just break it down a little bit, okay? Because we're talking about 257. That's what Dana said. If you see something spectacular, okay. Well, let's look at the scenarios here real quick. I mean, we'll give our picks in a second, but okay, Conor goes out there and beats Dustin. He knocks him out. I don't think he's giving Conor the rematch. We talked about this. It's very personal with Khabib. It's not about money or the challenge of it. There's just personal hatred there. I don't think Khabib would even give Conor that opportunity to fight him again. So there's that. That's my opinion. I'll get your thoughts in a sec. If Poirier wins, some crazy upset, maybe, but then they just fought like a year ago. Like it's not like anything that was like ages ago in terms of that fight. So I don't think he's coming back for Poirier. And then you got Hooker and Chandler. Like I don't think he's fighting either of those guys, regardless of what happens there, regardless if Chandler wins, regardless if Hooker wins. That's not a money fight or a type of fight that I think Khabib considers a challenge. Then Dana White throws out Charles Oliveira being like, well, he's out here as well. Well, look, if Khabib really wanted that Oliveira fight, would he not have said it when Oliveira had beat Ferguson in December as opposed to right now? So this makes no sense to me other than like you said, they're just selling us wolf tickets. I don't see any scenario where Khabib comes back. And then the kicker, sorry, one more thing. Dana White then says, GSP, we're not even looking at that anymore. Khabib's gone past it too. So to me, that was the fight you bring him back for, but I don't think it's happening. I mean, I just explained there, I think out of all those scenarios, why would he come back for any of those? Your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, there's no real reason. To come back. There you can find reasons, and you can find reasons not to. Right? You can find a reason if you're really looking for one. Right? But then again, when you look at the field, there's or maybe maybe Conor. That's probably the only name out of the five guys you just named that makes it even intriguing or interesting. And even let's just take ourselves out as people in the business. But from people who watch the sport and who are fans of the sport, there's nothing there that you just named that sounds interesting. That really like pulls at you. Because it's all the same. So the only one you see is Conor, but you already know what's going to happen in that. We already saw what happened, and But again, you can sell the wolf ticket and the chance of hope that Conor may be able to beat the guy, but it's just I don't think he could beat him. I think the guy has his number, and that's just what it is. Stylistically, the guy has his number. So he's Conor's never been good on the ground, ever. So there's no reason for him to come back. But if he does. I guess he'll just be the winner of Conor or Dustin. That's the only thing that makes sense. Everything else doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And the key thing there, you mentioned the style matchup. Like, had Conor got knocked out quickly in that first fight, or had he, lost a close decision, fair enough. There might be some intrigue there. People saying maybe he didn't deserve it, but you're right. It was a one-sided fight. I was at that fight. I remember Khabib taking him down a lot. Habib actually rocked Conor. People, I think, forget that he hit Conor and he staggered him a little bit too. Like his
right hand. It was a right hand.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I'm with you there. I think style-wise, it's just a nightmare matchup for Conor. Of course, Conor, was asked about it this week, as they would, right? They have to bring it up. And Conor McGregor saying he is afraid to fight me again. Again, this is wolf tickets, ladies and gentlemen. This is Conor saying, like, Khabib's not afraid. He just beat you decisively. I'm sure he'd gladly take the paycheck. It's a matter of he doesn't like Conor. He doesn't like what Conor said about his wife, about his religion. This thing goes deep, people. This is what you have to understand, is that Conor, it's got nothing to do with competitiveness. It has everything to do with the fact that he hates Conor. That's what I think. Conor
has that Trump. I know that Trump charm, right? Yeah. That Donald Trump where he comes in and tells you, I'm the best. I did the most numbers, and and this guy doesn't want to, or this guy doesn't want to. Whatever he says, the truth is gonna be. It's whatever he says, his truth is gonna be. So, but everybody knows the guy's not scared of him. I mean, the guy's not scared of you, bro. You know what I know about. Whatever you're gonna need to tell yourself to get whatever point across you're trying to get, then by all means, it's a freedom of speech, it's a free world. You can say whatever you want, but everybody knows what the truth is, because we could just press play on the tape and watch it, of what happened with you and the guy. So, it is what it is.
Do you think the rematch ever happens with Khabib and Conor? I'm saying no.
It depends. It depends on what Conor pulls off, right? Let's just say I don't think the fight with Dustin and him beating Dustin is enough to bring the guy back into the mix. Khabib like, all right, I'm going to come back and fight this guy. Not right away. I think if Conor beats Dustin, then Conor goes and beats somebody else and then wins a boxing fight or something. Then the stock is so high that he can just come in and just take everything Buddy just worked for, and take all of the energy away from what the guy's built up to that point. So that becomes more intriguing, because it's like taking candy from a baby for him at that point, because he already did it to him. So he's like, all right, it's time to take everything you worked for. Now I'm gonna make your life miserable from winning 2-3 fights in a row, you know? So that would be the only thing of intrigue to me for him, because like it's almost, as fighters almost have to start coming up with shit that's gonna be like a challenge or something interesting to them, because when shit gets stale, it just gets stale. And that's why you see the brothers don't fight a lot, because shit gets stale really quick and it gets super boring from when you're at that high of a level and you're trying to make these marquee fights and big moments happen. When the field is stale, bro, you know, and the field is not interesting for him. You know what I mean? So yeah. I could see why.
I'll throw out a wild card here. I mean, this is just something I thought of right now. Do you think Khabib would ever take Conor on in a boxing match? He wants a challenge. Let's see how good your stand-up is against a guy in Conor. Or do you think he's just like, no, like that's not my wheelhouse?
Nah, I don't think he does that.
I don't think so either, but I just, threw it out there because we're thinking about rematch. I still think MMA-wise it never happens because, again, I just don't think Khabib sees that as much of a challenge. And again, it's not about the money for him as well. Right on cue, though, of course, the announcement, Nate Diaz coming out and saying, fuck Khabib. Good for him. I mean, it's smart. Look, when a big fight happens and it's in your division, that's what you do. Fighters take note. If something, in your division happens, and in this case, it was the announcement, you got to get people talking about you. Nate Diaz definitely, made his mark on the internet on Saturday when that announcement happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's how he feels. That's exactly, he's been telling you guys how he feels about the guy for a while now, so it's no secret. It is what it is with those guys, and he punked him. He punked him crazy at a press conference. This is all on video. People should go watch this stuff. It's all on video.
Go look it up. There was an incident a couple years ago. Yeah,
you can see your favorite fighters getting punked on. Somebody made a reel of this. Somebody made a reel of Nate Nick and Nate just fucking punking a bunch of fighters, and Khabib is one of those guys that got punked. So he's done it. So it's nothing he's tweeting that he won't say to the man's face, No. And everybody knows what it is. Yeah, exactly. So it is what it is.
Before we move on to UFC 257, which is a great card on Saturday, we got to quickly talk about the fight card that took place today during the day. I think it was on at 6 a.m. Pacific time. It's like, that's crazy. Wow. I'm guessing they thought that people were taking the day off because of the inauguration. I don't know. Obviously in Canada, for me, it means nothing. I mean, it's just, we just a regular work day, but we did have a card. And in the main event, a really important welterweight fight, Michael Chiesa, Neil Magny. And as Michael Chiesa, who was actually a slight underdog in this one, coming through with a really dominant performance over Neil Magny. We saw some improved striking. His grappling was on point. Chiesa looked great. And then after the fight, calling out Colby Covington. It's the second time he's done that, but I think this has a little bit more power, seeing that it was a main event and the fact it was such a dominant win. I know you didn't catch the fight, but just the implications of this fight, Kev, just with, Chiesa really having a new life at welterweight, since moving up, he's now undefeated. This is a big win for him in the 170 division.
Yeah, what is he? 14-4, I believe his record is 14
overall. Yeah, but I think he's 4 in a row now. At welterweight.
4 in a row.
He's a big guy, Kev. I've seen him in person. I'm like 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. Kiesa's bigger than me, and he fights at 170, which is crazy. So honestly,
I like Chiesa. I like him. I like what how he conducts himself on the screen. He seems like a pretty good guy, pretty straightforward guy. So it's good to see him get that win. Neil, he's been Neil. He's been in the top 10 and just kind of hanging around, not really going up, not really going down, just kind of staying there. So Chiesa was number 5, number 6 or 7 ranked in the world right now.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle of the pack for sure.
Yeah, he's in the middle of the pack for sure. So it's a good win for him. It's a good performance from him. I didn't really get to watch it. I kind of see a bit of highlights, but it was too early, like you said. And he's a big. Chiesa is big, and honestly, I had him on the list of guys for Nick when we discussed guys about a few months back. He was on the list because I thought that we were gonna get our. This is but Nick is just the kind of guy he wasn't gonna take a fight like that But long story short, I thought I was impressed by how many wins he was pulling off and how he was doing it, you know what I mean? But I guess he's just cool. He's just a cool guy, so nobody wants to just beat up on him, the guys don't want to, but he's a cool guy. And I think that Colby, as far as Colby goes, here's the issue with that. That fight doesn't make sense for Colby because he's trying to get Nick or Nate or Connor or fucking Usman, or he's chasing big names. He's trying to establish himself as a pay-per-view star and put himself in the realm with big names. So the Chiesa fight, doesn't make sense for him. Doesn't make sense for him. Now, if Chiesa keeps winning and then Chiesa puts himself in the top 3, 4, then he can only avoid him for so long until the UFC makes him take the fight. Colby he's in a very weird space because it's between like you talk enough shit to where there's enough attention to draw for you, but you don't have no pay-per-view sales yet, to back up anything. But you're right there in the mix, and like a lot of people want to beat your ass. So so you're definitely a name that's out there that's interesting. So he would only want to shoot up. He doesn't want to shoot down. So, I don't see Chiesa. I think Chiesa should go in there and, I think he should. I think it depends on the name, right? If Gilbert Burns goes on and fights, Usman, and then Gilbert loses to Usman, then there you go. That's a good name for him to fight.
Good thinking. Yeah, there's Vicente Luque. There's a few names out there that I think would work. I'm with you. I don't think Colby's next. It could be depending on if the UFC's kind of like, look, Colby, you got to fight because he hasn't fought a lot, Colby, and part of that is because they're trying to find the right opponent. I mean, both of them are, right? And
they said Jorge Masvidal was the guy, right? And they said that.
Well, I don't know what's going on with that fight. The longer this goes on, the more I think that fight might not happen. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I think maybe not for Masvidal in terms of the style matchup, but I mean, name-wise, I mean, you can't get that's one of the biggest fights at welterweight right now is Masvidal and Colby, 2 huge names, 2 former teammates, 2 rivals, like 2 huge fan bases. Like that seems like a no-brainer. But the fact we're coming up to February almost, that fight hasn't been booked gets me a little bit worried. And Masvidal's last fight was the Usman fight back in July, so it's like what's going on there? So I think it's going to be like a domino effect. I think you've got Colby, you've got Masvidal, Wonderboy Thompson, who we talked to on this channel this week. He says he wants Leon Edwards, but I mean, he might have to take someone else too. Wonderboy's, a little bumped up from the last fight with Jeff Neal. Says he's probably going to come back in, he's thinking the spring. So again, I think it's going to be a domino effect. Like Chiesa's kind of in that conversation, but like you said, doesn't have that clout to get sort of a big name. But the UFC is going to have to do something because these top guys have got to fight each other at some point, and they've got to figure it out. And then, like I said, you've got Chimaev and Edwards on the 13th as well of March, so that's another one.
The best bet for Chiesa is to just try to shoot for somebody in the top 5. And somebody who's when you look in the top 5, you look at the top 5, you're like, okay, who's in here that doesn't belong here as status-wise? The only name I can think of is Gilbert Burns, and he's just there because of he's been able to pull off a winning streak and so on and so forth. But he's not a star. So you beat somebody in the top 5, I think you put yourself now you're in a conversation to fight one of the stars, or one of the guys with at least with a bigger name than you. So yeah.
I agree. So yeah, looking at the top 5 right now, Usman's the champ. Covington is number 1, then Burns, then Edwards, then Masvidal, then Thompson, then Woodley. Woodley's the name that could be one for Chiesa. Chiesa was 8, by the way. You're actually right. I thought he was ranked higher. Damian Maia is another name too in there. So you never know.
There you go. Shoot for the names right in front of you right there. But you're gonna try to go for a guy who's ranked number 1. You know how they play. They're not gonna give you that guy because you're not at that place to be able to get that guy, and that's just the reality of the fact.
All right, let's talk about UFC 257. What's everyone's talking about leading into the weekend? Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, the rematch. This is at 155, not like their first fight, which is at 145. A lot of interesting things sort of heading in. Obviously, Conor and Dustin only fought once last year, but if you look since 2017, Kev, Dustin Poirier has fought 8 times. Conor McGregor's fought 2 times. 3 if you include the Floyd Mayweather fight. And it's not to say that he's not training. Obviously he is, but that is one thing where I don't know if that hurts Dustin or helps him. It hurts him because he's definitely taken some damage in those fights, but it helps him in that he's more active. What are you looking at in terms of this matchup on Saturday? Who do you think takes it?
I think this fight's closer than people think it's going to be. Mm-hmm. I think that Dustin has a real chance if he can put it together that night. You need to be able to put it together because he has enough to be able to beat the guy. I mean, to beat that guy, you gotta be able to stay away from that left hand, and then you got to be able to weather, those flurries that he'll have. Conor has these flurries sometimes where he's throwing a lot of punches, straight punches, and uppercuts, and he's so you got to be able to weather that. And his gas and Buddy's gas tank is not a big gas tank. He gasses out, mid 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, and down. He's he's walking on, light legs. So there's a way to beat this guy. I don't know if Dustin can put it together that night, all the way together to where he can look spectacular and actually stop this guy. Because I think that Dustin could stop this guy because understand, he fought Gaethje. When he fought Gaethje, he showed heart. He showed heart, and he showed that he can go in there and stand and bang. And also he can out heart and catch the guy first. He caught, Justin with a nice clean thing that put him away, So he showed that he can do that. But can he put it together that night the way he put it together the night that he did with Justin Gaethje? And that's what's remained to be seen. Because one thing about Conor is he's going to show up, and you have to beat him. He doesn't really beat himself, right? Mm-hmm. If anything, he shows up, and if you give him an opportunity to take, he takes it. He takes it right away. Donald Cerrone, he gave him, the opportunity, and he took it. It was right in front of him. It was the shoulder, boom, a couple punches, and it was done. You know what I mean? So he knows how to capitalize off of it because he's looking for a spectacular knockout. So Mendez, did the same thing. Who else was standing right in front of him? Eddie was standing right in front of him. Right. So these guys, if you give him that opportunity, he's gonna capitalize. That's one thing about him. He doesn't shy away from the bright light. You know what I mean? And he performs in the bright light. So you gotta take it from him, and you gotta take it. And then once you do, he doesn't have enough heart to be able to, or gas tank to be able to sit in there with you. He's going to gas himself out. And if you got enough, then you should be able to. So that's why I think it's a closer fight, because I see so many ways for a guy to win, right? I see one way Conor wins. And the way I see Conor win is he knocks the guy out. I don't see him beating him in no other way, because I don't even see him grinding out a 5-rounder and being fresh. Because I'm like, if this is going to go 5 rounds, Dustin should have enough to be able to, put a hurting on the guy. But, the left hand, man, so we'll see, man. Are we making our predictions? Of
course we're making our predictions. Who are you picking? Where are you putting your money?
After saying all of that, I think that the safe bet is Conor. Yeah. That's the safe bet. But if I was a betting man and I had some money to throw away, you know exactly where I'm putting it, because the odds look great. What are the odds? 3
yeah, Connor's 3-1 right now. He's a 3-1 favorite. Yeah. But see, I would almost say, and I'm going to kind of reveal my pick here. I would almost look at the round props, round 2, round 3. People saying Connor's going to beat him Connor's saying I'm going to finish Dustin in 60 seconds. That's how the first fight went. I don't think that's happening. Dustin's too smart for that. I don't think he's going to, try and here's what bothers me about when people talk about this fight. They keep referencing the first fight, and it's a completely different fight this time around. Dustin, you could see he had lost that fight before he walked in there. He was not mentally ready to fight a Conor McGregor at that point. I think he'd only been a couple camps in an American Top Team. He wasn't ready, and you could just see it on his face in the stare down. This time around, you definitely see Dustin a lot more confident, and he has every reason to be. You reference the Gaethje fight. That's a huge win. I mean, that's a very big win. Gaethje's a former interim champ. Dan Hooker's a big win too. We'll talk about him in a second. Also, this guy battered Max Holloway. We just saw Holloway put on, and granted, a different weight class. He was fighting at, Holloway's a featherweight, but still, that win over Max Holloway, I mean, he absolutely battered Max. You go look at the damage that Max took in his face. I don't think anyone's done that to him. So that's another feather in Poirier's cap as well, in terms of what could happen. And I'm with you. I think the longer the fight goes, that benefits Poirier. McGregor's style is to typically go out there and take your head off. Well, guess what happens if he doesn't get that finish? Then he slows down a bit, right? You look at those decisions, the fight with Diaz, right? That was a close fight in the rematch. Some people thought Diaz won. You know what I mean? That's where it gets interesting. So Conor, typically, he's better when he finishes his fights, obviously. But I think the longer the fight goes, Poirier has a little bit more experience in going the later rounds, whereas McGregor doesn't. So my official pick here is going to be Conor McGregor. I want to say third, but I'll go second round. I think, just the problem with Poirier is he does get hit. Even in the Hooker fight, he took some shots. A Dan Hooker shot is a lot different than a Conor McGregor shot. Conor McGregor can put you out. I think that McGregor will put him out in the second or the third round, but it's not going to be a quick finish. I don't think that's going to happen. All these people, like, it's like, it's like nothing happened. It's like no one can improve from their first fight, apparently, according to a lot of people, because they seem to think that Conor's going to steamroll him. I just don't see that happening, but I am going to pick Conor here.
There's a mental edge you have over a guy once you've knocked him out the way you knocked
Yes.
him out. It wasn't a flash knockdown, so there's a psychological in your mind, like when you beat somebody up in your mind, you think you could do it to him again and again and again if you did, because you just know you have his number. So it's really up to Dustin to show us that he's grown, mentally, and he's overcame that, and also that he's gonna, he's ready to go in there and die to beat this man. And that's really the guy that has to show up, is a guy that's willing to just the guy that showed up that fought, Danny Hooker, the guy that showed up that fought Justin Gaethje, the guy that showed up that fought Max Holloway. The only issue with that is that you can't get hit with those shots like Hooker was hitting you with, because this guy will put your lights up. So he has it. Is he going to be able to put it all together that night? That's what, because he's shown us that he can do it. But now you're standing across from a guy that knocked you out, and he knocked you out bad, and he's going to talk all this shit to you. He's going to get in your head. So how are you going to respond to this? Can you put it all together and bring that nigga into where you need to bring him to put him away? So we'll see.
And then obviously the big thing with McGregor is how many times is he going to fight this year? He's saying 3 to 4 times. I think that number is going to be a little bit lower. You mentioned boxing. That could be an option. It's all got to make financial sense. And I think right now during a pandemic, I don't see the UFC really rolling out their bank to obviously this fight's together, but I think in general, it's not going to be easy for them to give Conor the fights he wants at the price they want, I'm sure, because they've got to do all these events. Like this is the reason I don't think Conor's going to fight 3 to 4 times a year. They survived last year with Conor McGregor fighting once. They survived last year with John Jones fighting once. They find other people to fill those cards up. I'm sure they'd love Conor to fight every month, but the reality is they still have to put these cards on without, whether McGregor's there or not. So to them, it's just about filling seats. I think for that reason, we will only see Conor fight. I mean, he might only fight this one fight, but I'll say he fights twice this year. I'm going to go with that. What do you think?
All right, so here I'm gonna let you in on a little managerial thought. All right,
yeah.
Here's why he fights 4 times this year.
Okay, I like it.
Here's why he fights 4 times this year. He's trying to get out of that contract. He needs to get the fuck out of that contract. So he doesn't have another 2-3 years to be sitting in that contract. He's ready to get out now and go live his best life and go make all of these big events happen. And he can't do that under this contract. So he has to get out of there as fast as he can. And from my understanding, there's at least 8 to 6 on that contract. There's at least 8 to 6 on that contract. So if you can run up 3 or 4 this year, then you run up another 2 or 3, then you're out. I mean, you're out. You're out next year. So, you run up 3 or 4 this year, you run up another 2, 3 next year, you're out. So his exit, if he goes according to plan, he's out of this contract by next summer. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So now it makes sense. You see why it makes sense for him to fight as many times as he can. And it also makes sense for the UFC because you have a year where it's down. Imagine you have 4 Conor McGregor pay-per-views under your belt in a year with no fans. And the beginning starts with no fans. I mean, it's a good year, and when you're able to, if they have 4 Conor pay-per-views in a calendar year, then they're gonna break all the records from previous years, and that's in a down year. So that's why it makes sense for both parties to try to get as many fights done as possible because it's a down year, and you're trying to do numbers, and this is the only way you're gonna do numbers is letting this guy fight, and also this guy needs to fight because he's trying to get out of his contract. He needs freedom. He has no freedom. He wants to call himself the boss and all of this and that, but he really ain't, so he needs to get out so that he can really be a boss of himself because that's how he feels, And a lot of these fighters like that, only a few fighters are in a position to where they can go. They don't need a promoter. They can go and do their own thing. He's one of those guys, So why is he doing that? Canelo's one of those guys, Nick and Nate are one of those guys, So there's only a few guys who can actually do that. You know what I mean? And he's one of those guys. So you need to get the hell out of that contract as fast as you can to own yourself outright. So it makes sense to me.
Okay, well, I'll play devil's advocate here then. Why did Conor only fight once last year?
I think that he was trying to get those fights. I think he was trying to get the fights he was trying to get, but a lot of things didn't make sense. And then also nobody knew how to deal with the situation. Because remember, he fought early in the year. He fought in January.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And then so you knew that he was trying to start off the year in a bang and try to run up as many fights as he can that year. You could tell this plan that he's doing now was the plan for last year. It's just the COVID happened and he couldn't run up 3-4 fights. But I could tell he had full intentions to run up a couple of more fights. And that's why, because he's just trying to get out this contract. So nobody knew how to deal with the COVID. Nobody knew what was the situation. And then he started doing, exposing for DMs and all types of shit. And then, the business goes sour, with Dana. Dana can hold a grudge real nice.
Yeah, no, I've heard some stories. Let's talk about the co-main event. I'm not going to dissect this too much, but we've got Dan Hooker, Michael Chandler. I really think Dan Hooker, this is his fight to lose. There's a lot of advantages here for Hooker. For starters, he's a much bigger fighter than Michael Chandler. He's 6 feet tall with a 75.5 inch reach. Chandler is 5'7". Chandler's 5'8" with the 69 inch reach. So Hooker's got a huge reach advantage. Hooker's 75.5 compared to Chandler's 69. In terms of the reach and the height, Hooker's 2 inches taller. He's sorry. Yep.
Sometimes that's not an advantage. I always tell you this. Sometimes it's not. And that little guy, Chandler, what he's going to try to do. He's going to try to take this man down. And him being small and compact like that is an advantage for him to bring that guy down to where he's trying to take him. Hooker has a duty. Hooker's duty is to keep that man at the end of that punch and the end of those kicks. Don't let this guy get too close and try to take this thing to the ground, because when you take it to the ground now, you're not taller than me anymore. You see what I'm saying? So there's a real. So this is a stylistic matchup. And when this guy shoots in, because he's gonna shoot in at some point in this fight, he's trying to get as close as he can to me. He's either trying to cut distance to fight on the inside, or he's trying to cut distance to take me down. That is what he's trying to do. So I know it, you know it, the whole fucking world knows it. Now I got to figure out how to keep this guy on the end of that 77-inch reach advantage that I have. So if he can fight tall and you can fight long, then you can win. And Dan Hooker sometimes fights tall, sometimes he doesn't, sometimes he's inside mixing it up. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. You see what I'm saying? We got to watch how Dan fights, and we got to see how Chandler fights, and to see if he can put it all together.
Well, who does Chandler remind you of a little bit? It reminds you of Iaquinta, which is a fight where he was tall and he was big, and it was an advantage for him in that fight. And that's what it kind of reminds me of, is like Iaquinta, maybe not as good of, well, he definitely isn't as good of a wrestler as Chandler, but still he's got good wrestling and not great wrestling. And he's got knockout power like Chandler does too. It's a very similar matchup. That was one of the things I asked Dan in the interview. We'll plug that here in a second. But Dan talked about how there are similarities between the two. And just like I mentioned, the quality of opposition. I mean, you look at it here. Yes, Chandler beat Benson Henderson in his last fight. Henderson's not what he used to be. Sidney Outlaw before that got knocked out by Patricio Pitbull, who's a featherweight. I mean, with Hooker, he's fought Poirier, Felder, Iaquinta, Vic. Lost to Barbosa, has a knockout win over Gilbert Burns. Like, he's fought really good competition too. So that's why I think this is Hooker's fight to lose. Granted, if, like you said, if Chandler can get the takedown, it makes it very interesting. But I think Hooker keeps us on the feet, and I think he either finishes Chandler or he wins dominantly. But that's my pick. I
got Hooker too. I'd like to see Hooker pull this one off. I definitely would like to see him, pull it off. Do something to this guy who's coming in with a lot of hype. Also, the reason why Chandler fights similar to Iaquinta is because they're from the same gym. They were training over there in Florida at that same gym with Usman and those guys back then.
MMA?
Yeah, pardon me?
It's Sanford MMA. It used to be called Hard Knocks, I think.
Yeah,
before that it was Black Zillions.
Yeah, Black Zillions, yes. So they were over. So he was over there. So yeah, stylistically, it makes it's similar styles because of how they train, the same striking pattern almost. So yeah, But I'm gonna take Hooker for this.
Okay, fair enough. I'm pretty sure Iaquinta didn't train there. He's a Longo. He's a Cerro Longo guy. You might be getting him confused.
No. Iaquinta.
Iaquinta?
Yeah, he did know because he was sparring Usman when I was with Usman.
Okay, maybe he was there for a bit.
When I was with Usman, we went to St. Louis. Usman fought the Northern Viking guy. What's the Viking?
Conor. No, who was it? I'll have to double check that. Yeah, he was preparing for a fight, and so you said that Chandler they were in St. Louis for that, or they were in Florida?
Well, Iaquinta was sparring, was training with Usman the whole time. That's how I met the guy. I met the guy because he was in camp or he was training with the guys. And then when I went in, the guy was there training with them. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this makes a little sense. And I think that I don't know. I think he was out in Florida training with those guys.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. I just know his home base is usually Sarah Longo's with like Aljamain Sterling and Merab Dvalishvili and those guys. And that fight you were referencing was Emil Meek. That was the one. I forgot about that fight because Meek's like hasn't done anything in forever. So that's
another guy that was a bit hyped up.
He was, wasn't he? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I referenced obviously the Dan Hooker interview we did. We're going to throw to that here real quick. Great line here by Dan Hooker talking about how Chandler could be stepping on a grenade in this fight. So yeah, we're going to throw to that right now.
Man, it all goes well. I do my thing. I pick him apart, force him to take some risks, force him to take some shots, and then he runs into a bit of a landmine. And I think we all know what those are. Those are my two knees I got ready for him.
And there you go. That's my interview with Dan Hooker. Really great stuff from him. We got him a couple weeks out. Little tip for you media people out there: get the fighters long before their fight starts. I've seen Hooker do a lot of media, but we managed to get him a lot sooner. Really honest stuff from Dan in this interview. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because you talked about how, I mean, we've talked about this before. Chandler was the backup to Khabib and Gaethje. So that tells me the UFC feels like Chandler is a title contender. Of course, he was a former Bellator champion. And with Hooker, the big thing with him in his career is, can he get over that hump? You know, he had the Barbosa fight. He got destroyed in that fight. And then he had the fight with Poirier, which was his last fight. It was a close fight, but he lost. So I think the theme with Hooker is, can he get over that hump? And for Chandler, he's got to prove that he's as advertised. Is he, you know, worthy enough of being that backup spot for a title shot? So a lot of implications there in this fight. And like I said, the winner, I mean, who knows what happens? Maybe they get the winner of Poirier McGregor. We'll see. But yeah, I don't know. Your thoughts on the fight, though, the implications of it anyways.
Was the Hooker? Does the Hooker fight?
Yeah, Hooker and Chandler. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Hooker needs this win. He needs this win to show that he can beat a guy that's a high level guy, and also you know, with a pedigree like Chandler does. You know, former world champion. You know, the different organization. You know, you need to put that under your resume. I think if he beats this guy, I think this is his best win to date. Not his best fighter he's fought, but the best win to his resume to date. So, you know, there's a lot there writing for him. I think that Michael beats a guy that's in the top 5. You know, him being the guy in the top 5. I think it proves that he's in the top 5, and then he needs to be next in line for whatever title is available next. It's just logical. You know, everything's lined up. So he puts himself in the mix. I think if he beats Hooker, he puts himself in the mix. I think he wins one more. He beats one more guy. I think he gets the title shot because there's too many ways to play. Like, you know, you have him and Hooker. Then you have Oliveira.
You've got Gaethje as well, right?
Who's to say that Chandler is more deserving of a shot than Oliveira is? You know, even after this win, Oliveira just beat
Tony Ferguson.
I think he's more deserving of a title shot before Chandler is, you know.
He is, but I'll tell you what, I think if Chandler wins this fight, I think he's getting the title shot, because look at the UFC. They were going to make him the backup of Khabib and Gaethje. That to me says they want to get him in a title position as soon as possible. And, you know, Chandler is a lot more marketable than Oliveira is. And I'm with you. I think Oliveira deserves the title shot 100%. Destroying Kevin Lee and destroying Ferguson, that automatically should get you a title shot. But knowing the UFC and how they market things, don't be surprised if Chandler upsets Hooker this weekend, because he's a slight underdog. If he wins this fight, I bet you he gets the next title shot. Mark this down. If he wins, I want to be called Mystic Lynch. There you go.
You're definitely right about that, because we know how they operate as a business, and we see how they operate. And you know, the All-American wrestler guy who is a former world champion at a different organization coming in with all that heat, and then he stops the guys in the top 5 or beats the guy in the top 5. Then you just take it and you don't take no more risk with him, and you say, all right, we're just gonna bank on this buying right now. We're just gonna bank on it right now. We're not even gonna risk anymore. To where I feel like there's fighters that are, you know, in front of him in the line, and I think that, you know, a Hooker win doesn't get you the title shot, because Hooker as an opponent hasn't sniffed that title yet, hasn't fought a title fight, you know. So, but you beat somebody who's either beat a champion or is in a title fight situation, or he's in the mix for that title. Then you just beat somebody who's in the mix. You know, Dan was not in the mix for this title. You know, This is putting Dan in the mix for the title. So, from my standpoint, that's what it looks like. But from a business standpoint, you're just gonna cash in on whatever hype you're gonna create from him winning this. You know.
All right, we are a combat sports podcast, so we will be talking some boxing for the rest here on out, but we have a lot of UFC stuff, obviously, so we had to get that out first. This Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury fight, not officially signed yet, but Eddie Hearn, sort of outlining some of the implications here. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Froggie, but I'll get your thoughts on this. So 2-fight deal with a rematch clause. The first fight, 50-50 split. Second fight, the winner is 60-40. Yeah, that's kind of what we're hearing right now. Any other info and anything else? I mean, this is going to happen. I think it's just a matter of them actually putting pen to paper. But are you hearing anything right now on that?
My main man, Eddie Hearn, man. That's my guy right there. Eddie Hearn is leave it to Eddie, man. Leave it to Eddie to get the job done, to be able to pull this one off. I mean, it's basically the writing's on the wall. I think it just comes down to just selecting a date and making sure also because you understand Tyson has a deal with ESPN and Joshua has a deal with DAZN. So and Matchroom Boxing. So Tyson is with Bob Arum and Top Rank and Frank Warren. So he's with them too as his promoters. Now, granted, these are two different promoters. Frank Warren is from England, and he's been around the business 40 years, almost, 50 years, 40 years. I don't know. He's an old dude. He has his own situation going on. I think it's William. I can't remember what the name of his company is. He's a top promoter. He promotes Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury also has Bob Arum, Queensberry Promotion. Queensberry Promotion is the name of Frank Warren's promotion company. And then you have Top Rank with Bob Arum, who's been around for 80 years. This guy freaking managed Muhammad Ali and all these dudes, and he's like 100 years old. And those two are working with this one fighter. Then you have Eddie Hearn, who's with Joshua, and he's with DAZN. So there's a lot of big promoter egos and then TV stations. So the fact that they're this together has already been done. The hard agreements have already been agreed upon. So, because people don't understand negotiations, how this shit works. Like, we have to negotiate the money, we have to negotiate the gate, we have to negotiate the points, you have to negotiate location, you have to all of when the fight is big, everything is up for negotiation. The ring, who walks first, who walks last, which corner gets which corner, who's out. Everything is up for negotiation for when it can fight like this. So the fact that we gotten this far lets me know that this thing's already a done deal. We just need to basically lock down the date and decide, where they're gonna go for this. And also another problem with this fight was Joshua has a mandatory for his belt, and we just saw him fight a mandatory with Pulev. Now he has a mandatory for that WBO with Usyk. So I think Usyk is gonna take the step aside money. I think they're gonna give him $1 million to $2 million to step aside, or something close to $1 million to step aside. It's a big fight, and he knows it, and he doesn't want to, and he has an opportunity to be, to ruin the party. And I think that he does that. He gets paid out, and he also gets, a guarantee to get the next whoever wins. Whoever wins this thing, because it's a rematch clause in this. So no matter what happens, we're getting 2 fights, no matter what. And we shall see how it goes.
When do you think the fight will happen? Just your gut feeling.
I think in the summer. I think in the summer is when it happens. I think that by June. I think what month are we in? January. I think May to July, somewhere in between that time is when this fight happens. And then the next one happens at the end of the year.
Yeah. Quiet month right now for boxing. We had obviously the Garcia fight at the beginning of the month, but we do have a really interesting fight coming up here March 27th in Dallas. It is Vergil Ortiz taking on Maurice Hooker. Vergil is someone I've actually interviewed because his father trains Chris Cyborg. I do a show every week with Chris Cyborg, so Vergil is a great interview when I got a chance to speak with him. But do you think he's the next boxing superstar at 147? I mean, he's definitely looks like he has, the potential, but what are you thinking?
Is this fight confirmed? So this is confirmed. The date is set.
March 27th in Dallas.
Okay, well, I knew that. I was just making sure it was confirmed. But I mean, Vergil, I've watched him now in person, I would say about 3 times now. I've watched him in person. I've got to meet him. Oh, funny thing is, actually was with his father 2 weeks ago at the fight in the fight that we read at the Devin Haney Ryan Garcia fight. A good friend of mine, Ali Setback, introduced us to each other, and we got to really talk. And he just followed me on Instagram, actually, Vergil Senior. But no, cool dude, cool dude. Very very thought out in the art, in the boxing art. But he's taught his son well, and Vergil's dangerous, bro. He is very, very dangerous. I think that yes, he has huge star potential all over him, and I think that kind of. Remember when Mikey Garcia was coming up, and Mikey Garcia was kind of like, I feel like he's kind of like on that trajectory, because he can knock a guy out, he can box, he can do a lot of things, but we haven't really, and people haven't really got to see him really box. He's a really good boxer, more than he's just a knockout guy. People think he's just a knockout guy, but the angles and the punches he throws, I mean, I watch all of that. I've watched him live 3 times, and he's the real deal. And Maurice Hooker is a friend of mine. So Maurice moving up to 147 and taking this fight is giving Vergil an opportunity, and he's giving another kid from Dallas. They're both from the city, so he's giving another kid from the DFW area an opportunity to be able to get a big fight versus a former world champion. And then also this helps. I don't know why Maurice is taking this fight, because I'm sure there was more fights he could have took, but I guess with this, whatever his promotional situation is now, because he's bounced around a little bit, whatever the situation is now, I guess he's just gonna make the best out of it by fighting this guy. And we had Progress versus Hooker, that got ruined. You know what I mean?
Thanks, COVID.
Yeah. So I guess this is his best option to date.
Yeah. No, for sure. We've seen someone that, Vergil has ties to, in the past, in Ryan Garcia. What will it take for him to get to that Ryan Garcia, superstardom? And granted, this is something we talked about, I think, in the last episode, about Garcia tapping into that YouTube market. Like, Garcia just has played it perfectly. I think Ortiz has that potential, but what do you think?
I don't think Vergil has the same pull as Ryan does. I don't think he has the potential to even have the same pull as Ryan does. I think Ryan has tapped into a whole different market. I think that he's a combination of YouTube, Instagram, and just like TikTok. He just comes from that world. Like, he's molded from that world. Granted, he's a fighter first, so he comes from that. Vergil comes from hard, old school Mexican, style, dads, Mexican guys. Like, he's a Texas Mexican. It's a huge difference between a Texas Mexican and a California, guy who's Mexican, who grew up in a different area. So I think that, yeah, like the cowboy boots, the hat, like the whole thing, like Vergil reminds me of that. He, like Mikey Garcia had, it's like, it's very just core to Oxnard, California, while Vergil is core to Texas, to Arlington, Fort Worth, Texas, so he represents and embodies a Mexican from Texas, you know what I'm saying? So it's two different kind of, but from a pure standpoint, from a fighter standpoint, Vergil is a problem. He's a real problem. And I'm talking about like maybe honestly, I'm only thinking of maybe 4 guys I think that can really test him, and really, really the rest I think he could beat. And this Maurice fight, I just hate the fact that Maurice is coming from 140 to 147 to go fight this guy. That's the part I don't like, but we'll see, man. And also, the guy that Maurice fought last, Ramirez, is Josh Ramirez. Ramirez is the champion at 140. He has 2 belts at 140. Jose Ramirez is trained by the same guys who train Vergil Ortiz. Mm-hmm. So that's a bit worrying for me, because the guy who's training him is Robert Garcia, and I know this guy, and it's Mikey Garcia's older brother and trainer. So, and I was at the fight when Maurice fought Ramirez. We were at the fight, Hooker versus Ramirez. We were right there, and the way Ramirez did it, it was good the way he did it. You could tell it was a good game plan, and he was able to stop Hooker. So I feel like Vergil will do the same or even worse, because there's already a blueprint. They watched it, So that's my opinion on that.
Manny Pacquiao. We haven't seen him in over a year. We're switching gears here a little bit. What do you think his next move is? Because he's been off for like a year. Also, I got to point this out too. Like, there was that whole weird thing with Paradigm, right? Where he came out and said he wasn't part of Paradigm. Paradigm said they signed him. Then he came out later and said like, hey, I'm not with Paradigm. And then like, I think like a month ago, he's like, yeah, I'm with Paradigm again. Like, I don't know what happened there, but yeah, what do you think's next for Manny?
He really just has to capitalize on whatever the biggest opportunities in front of him.
Yeah.
That's really all it is. And the biggest opportunity in front of him he's sitting in a cage right now. And that guy that's sitting in the cage right now, the octagon I'm talking about, which is Conor, is signed to Paradigm. So, from where I stand, I could see exactly how they did it. I could see how that guy who runs Paradigm did it. Hey, we could do this for you, could do this for you, and plus we could get you the biggest fight, and the most amount of money you could get is with this guy, but you got to sign a deal with us. Because he left his old management. I remember he left those guys. And yeah, we have the same we had the same accountant, the same financial companies did Nick's finances that we hired about a couple of years ago. Also does Pacquiao's finances. So he left those guys too. So it seems to me like he cleaned house, and once he cleaned house, he brought in all these new people, and I think Paradigm's one of those new people he bring in with the incentive that he's gonna fight Conor. So
yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
Do you think Connor's at the top of the list? Because you've got also, Errol Spence, Mikey Garcia, Ryan Garcia, Danny Garcia. Like there's a lot of other names, but I'm with you. I think Connor's got to be, because just how popular Conor is, and the fact that Connor's got one boxing fight.
In order of which one serves Manny the best, it'd be fighting Conor, because you can knock that guy out, you could stop him and make so much more money. Errol Spence is a dangerous fight for that man. But from a boxing standpoint, that's probably the biggest fight you can make for him, other than fighting Ryan Garcia. Mikey's not a big fight at all. Mikey is a big name in fighting, but it's not a huge fight. Nobody's sitting there waiting for that. But if he fights Earl, that's a huge boxing fight. If Ryan Garcia too is a huge fight. I mean, it's gonna be like taking candy from a baby, but it's a huge fight for him. So I don't see that happening. He's too young. So yeah, man, I think Conor is the best bet he has, but I feel like Conor won't be able to take that fight without the UFC because he's still under contract. So I don't know how that's going to work.
It's going to get very interesting this year with what happens with Conor. Like I said, whether it's boxing or MMA here, like you said, he's under contract. So we'll see. Devin Haney, obviously having some great success lately. Do you think he's the closest thing we've seen to Floyd Mayweather Jr. in terms of style, in terms of, just the demeanor, like a lot of different things, boxing ability, defense, ring IQ? Would you say that's a fair comparison?
Man, I watch all of these guys. I'm in the gym with a lot of guys. I go city to city, state to state, town to town. I'm spending a lot of time in gyms, and I spend a lot of time with fighters. And I will tell you right now that Devin has the most closest, almost duplicate of Floyd skills. And I'm not even exaggerating because he's my boy and because I fuck with those guys. But like I'm in the gym, bro. I watch all of these guys. Bro, this guy is. It's like when Colby. It's like when you ever watch those videos where you see they make a comparison to Colby and Michael Jordan, and then it's like a fused video where you should go watch this if you never watch it. But there's a picture of Kobe goes like this with the ball, and then it's Michael Jordan doing it with the ball, and it's exactly
it's one of those clever editing. Yeah,
it's exactly the same. Well, Devin does exactly the same thing. It's like I'm watching Floyd, bro. It's like that body, that shot, that jab he throws to the body, that straight. Oh man, everything he does, it's like it's so calculated and precise, and you could tell that he studied and watched. Because a lot of guys think that sitting in a shoulder roll is how Floyd fights. No. Floyd only fights like that in pockets, in spurts, when it's needed, and then also he doesn't just move his upper body in that, he moves his whole body on that, the guys just move their upper body and leave the whole bottom, but this kid, Devin, he just put it all together. And you know, like, to beat Devin Haney, you have to beat him. Like, you have to, when I say that, I mean, like, mentally, you got to be able to break him, or you got to be able to walk him down. And I don't see because you're not gonna outbox him, you know, and you're not gonna knock him out because unless you catch him with a flash knockdown, but he's too precise. Like everything is so disciplined, you know. He's definitely the closest. He's definitely as far as skill sets go, as far as just being able to throw all of the punches that Floyd does and being able to control distance like Floyd does, and being able to score where he needs to score and defend where he needs to defend. He just does all of it. He does all of it. It's just now we just need to see him fight some real people, you know, some real credible opponents, because he has nobody that he's fought that of any credit. Gamboa was over the hill, you know, so that's what we need for Devin, you know, and that's the only time will prove that.
There you go. That's episode 5 in the books here today. If you guys are watching this, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We're always putting up content on the channel. This week alone, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Yuri Prohaska. We had Aljamain Sterling last week. You guys are seeing nothing but the best interviews when it comes to boxing and MMA here. Like I said, I'm James Lynch. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. Kev, where can people find you and what do you got coming up here? I'll give you the last word here.
Name is right there. It's Al Frogito on Instagram. It's all there, man. I mean, we're just working, man. We're gonna have one of our young guys, Tristan Calruth, on that Dallas card, on the undercard for Hooker versus Maurice versus
not Dan.
Not Dan Hooker. Maurice Hooker. This is the boxer guy. This is my boxer.
Yes, yeah, I know.
Tristan Calruth will be will most likely be on that card in Dallas. So we look forward to that Hooker versus Vergil Ortiz card. Other than that, you know, same thing, man. Just bounce around the country and going to different guys training camps. A lot of announcements will be out soon for a lot of the guys that we're working with. And yeah, man, it's a great year, man. You saw another very important thing. We left this off, and I feel like it's important that I say this before we get off. USADA has taken off marijuana off of their banned substance list. This is a very important thing for us. Here's why it's important. I represent a client who was directly impacted by this USADA rules and basically paid the price for a moment like this to happen. Nick Diaz was suspended in 2015 for an offense of smoking cannabis and a failed drug test for smoking cannabis. Anderson Silva, the guy who you fought that day, ended up getting suspended for a year, and Nick got a 5-year suspension due to repeating offenses. And you know, my guy's been so ahead of the curve with this, and he's been trying to educate the world on you know, plants over pills. You know, plants over pills. You know, eat clean, you know, train clean, you know, live clean, you know, and he's been standing on top of a mountain shouting this for over 15 years, you know, and he had his reasons why he felt cannabis and CBD was a better replacement than taking these pills while in pain, or, you know, and the world, it took a while. You know, some people got on board and they understood, you know, some people that, you know, with a scientific background that did their research understood what this guy was saying. And everybody started hopping along slowly but surely. You know, you fast forward, you know, 5 years later, which is exactly 5 years from the time that Nick fought in January of 2015 till now, for the rule to be changed is a win. It proves that my guy was right the whole time, you know, and he's the one that had to sacrifice for this. And people, oh, he's a pothead, or no, the guy has been trying to teach you guys how to properly, you know, eat and recover, and without having to, you know, do, you know, all of these, you know, extra shit that they give you guys. You know, and as an athlete, as a former athlete, and as a guy that, you know, works around a lot of athletes, a lot of these guys are taking shots for pain and taking just all types of shit, putting all types of shit in their body. And my guy's been an advocate for marijuana and cannabis to be taken off of that list, because no fighter deserves to not be able to, you know, recover or you know, anti-inflammatory pills is what they give you, you know, and all these extra shit. And the guy should have an option not to use that shit if they're trying to recover, and just being able to, you know, have cannabis and CBD as a way. And for him, you know, to take all the bullets for everybody, I feel like, you know, this is an historic moment. It's an historic day, and Nick should be praised on this day like this. And when history tells the story, because the UFC is the first major league sport to take cannabis off of their banned substance list and completely, take it off of their list. This day and this moment should be recognized as a victory for Nick Diaz and for his fight that he's been doing to change the things that needed to be changed. And here we are, even though he paid the price for it, and you can't get back the time that he was taken away from him. But to know that going forward and the generations going forward are able to utilize this, this great plant to be able to, cope with, the hard mental, psychological lifestyle a fighter has to live is a huge win, and not have to look behind their back or worry about. It's huge. It's huge. It's huge. And I know so many fighters, boxing. Let me take that back. I know so many athletes, NFL, NBA, NHL, that utilize cannabis and have been using it for the last 10, 15 years that I've known. They just have to hide to do it. Now they don't have to hide. Now they could be open and nobody has to get penalized 5 years, $200,000 for cannabis when the guy was on steroids. So I'm just so happy for my guy. I'm so proud of Nick for standing for this and believing in it and riding this thing out. So I had to say that. I had to get that one off my chest real quick because, my guy, Nick is not the kind of guy that'll come out and be like, but somebody got to say it, and I feel like, nobody better to say it than myself right now. And I know that he's happy about it, because he's expressed that to me. And Kev, look at all of this, after all this time, so it's rewarding, man. It's rewarding to know that the next generation doesn't have to go through that shit. And my guy, put it all on the line for them. So that's why I want this moment to be remembered as a victory for Nick Diaz, and this to be a Nick Diaz moment more than anything else. So thank you to USADA and thank you to the Nevada State Commission and everybody for eventually coming around and seeing what needs to happen.